Look at these guys. This is the 65 plus category. You have to be at least 65 years of age to be in this race. I'm almost 68, and I know there's people older than me in this race. This is how we are supposed to be. We're not supposed to be sitting around doing nothing, accumulating maintenance prescription drugs. We have to be active on a number of levels. I'm working on a video where I'll be talking about the 4 pillars of longevity, where when you get into your 80s and 90s, you'll be like most everyone else is in their 50s and 60s. I'm working on not sounding like a monkey that's mimicking what he's heard, because basically I'll be a monkey mimicking what he's heard. Hey cycling community, this is Steve Grusis, the Cycling Greek. Alright, let's talk about the race. There were 17 starters. 7 were from Body Concepts team. 2 were from Velo Kings, 2 from Penn Velo, and 2 from Clean Power. There were 4 of us, including myself, without any teammates. If you're watching this video in the summer, you're going to look at the temperature in the upper left-hand corner and think, man, this is pretty cool. I'd love to race in a temperature like that. And this is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, we had a cold spell recently, and this isn't the summertime, so it was pretty hot. I'm showing you the entire first lap of this race, just to show you what the course is like. There's a lot of ups and downs on this 4.5 mile circuit. The climbs include easy bumps, a wall, moderate in length, low-grade drag, and a tough finishing climb that's in steps. You're actually looking at the video from my rear view camera. My front view camera didn't record, but because of my positioning and other events that happened during the race, the rear view camera is going to actually give quite a bit of information. During that entire first lap, I was toward the front. In fact, I was usually riding off the first wheel. If I rode too far back, I'd be concerned about a split happening that I have to cover. And covering something like that on this course requires a lot of energy. In terms of the tactics I was going to use, I was based on a number of assumptions that I made. Figuring that Body Concepts had 7 riders in it, including the sprinter Kevin Willits, I figured they would wait till the 3rd lap and start instigating attacks in order to isolate and get away from Tim Davis of Ham Nutrition. I also theorized that they would want one of the riders to get away in a small group that included Frank Winters, a time trial expert. Now, Frank has been national champion for various years at various levels, and this past year, or currently, he's national champion in mountain biking. If I was able to survive to that 3rd of 5 laps, I would be looking to hook up to that group. So now let's talk about me. I don't have the confidence I had last year coming into this race. I have a lot more endurance, I have a lot of strength in a lot of areas, but my work in the upper end has not been as consistent as it was last year. All those doubts in my ability I had coming into this race went away during this first lap. I was actually riding pretty strong, relative to my abilities in the past. I was able to hold my position and answer certain things that were happening during the race that you can't see because you can see them more with a front camera, which I don't have. Going to the action on the screen, we actually started on the stepped climb to the finish. And you'll notice that a lot of people have popped off. You'll also notice that I'm toward the back of this group that's left. And the person that's right behind me, that's Jay Ferrier. I remember from long ago. He's actually a triathlete that used to race with Lance Armstrong back in the day. Or against him, I should say. We are now on the 2nd lap, and a group of 17 has whittled down to a group of 8. And let me tell you, I was thankful to be with them, because when I got over that climb and started that 2nd lap, I'm thinking it's going to be really tough coming up that climb again to finish the 2nd lap. And because of that, you will notice that I'm not toward the front riding the front wheel. I'm being a lot more conservative. Now in this section, this is kind of like a little roller up and down, and now we're going up a wall. And I'm able to use my momentum and a little bit of punchiness to get up toward the front. Jumping ahead to the bottom of the finishing stepped climb. Now what happened in the first lap coming up this thing, I noticed as I was putting more intensity into it, as everybody was putting more intensity into it, I was feeling the heat. I was getting hotter, and that was having an effect. And same thing is starting to happen here. Now I'm showing 82 degrees, and maybe that's because I'm just coming off of the descent, but it's getting pretty hot. And I'm going to be going over to the shade. In fact, everyone's going to be going over to the shade. There's a tree that's shading part of the course for like 15 feet. And it doesn't seem like much, but you're going uphill, it's hot out there. Having that shade actually helps cool you down. Now again, it says 82 in the upper left-hand corner, but I don't believe it. After this initial step, there is an ever so slight descent, and I was just eyeing that. And the trick is to not just let up on that part and just to keep going. Now, if you look at the rider behind me, you'll see there's a moto and with some riders coming up, and this is the P12 group. I was hoping that when they didn't neutralize us, but that we would slow up, and we slowed up just a bit. That's how much I was hurting. And that when they went by, that the rest of our group wouldn't accelerate. Now, here's the shade part that I was just loving. But you'll notice I'm at the back, and so this is where, and again, I don't have that front camera, but you can see it. This is where I'm slowly coming off and losing contact. And this is still that first step. I'm keeping up with the pressure because I'm hoping that the others will let up, or they'll start to die off and then they gotta slow up. I am getting hot. In actuality, I don't remember I'm still in a wheel just at the back. And you see Jay Ferrier coming up and he's going past me. So maybe I'm barely hanging on at this point. My speed is still up there. There's another group coming up. Actually, it's the rest of the P12s, or what's left of the P12s, chasing after them. And since I'm toward the left side, I'm going to say that I have lost connection with the rest of those guys. Of course, what goes through my mind is, geez, I can just connect onto the back of this group, which is actually an illegal move, but that's also would be a move that I couldn't be able to do. By the time I crossed the finish line, the group ahead of me has started the final step to go over to start the next lap. Of course, the first thing I do when I see this other rider passing me is look at his number, and yes, it's a P12. I now have 3 laps to go solo, and I figure because of my abilities versus other people's abilities that I'm probably going to get caught by some riders. I was so overheated by not only the temperature but the sustained intensity that I was doing that I was feeling pretty weak, and I was thinking, man, I should just pull out. But then again, I drove 3.5 hours to get there to do the 1 hour, 15-minute race and driving 3.5 hours back, so I'm doing the whole thing. Besides, who knows what can happen later on during the race. I was off a full lap, and by the end of the second, starting the third, I was caught by 2 body concepts, Randy Floyd and sprinter Kevin Willits. Now, I neglected to mention earlier that even though I had my plan that I thought was going to happen in terms of them attacking on the third lap, what I didn't mention was that this race that's being put on, they are sponsoring it and they are actually running it. That means a number of them also have to work the race. And not only that, a few of them, and with some other riders, have done the 60-plus race as a first race in the morning. Now, I wouldn't do that because I couldn't do that on this course. If it was a flat course, yeah, I could easily do that, but on this course, I couldn't. In fact, after this race, I am getting some water. I have to go up to this building, and I'm on the street, and you have to go up on this curb, and this curb is about twice the size of what you'd nearly see on the street. So it's maybe like 9 inches, not more than a foot, but I was hurting so much that I stopped there for a moment. I'm thinking, man, that seems pretty high. That's how tough this course is when you're racing it. You'll notice that Kevin's having a little trouble with the climb. And I hadn't noticed that because I'm just concentrating on being with Randy, who's right in front of me. Eventually, Kevin makes his way up, and he rests on my wheel a little bit, and I'm on Randy's wheel. And soon thereafter, Kevin attacks. Of course, I start chasing him, and then when I catch him, Randy counters. Basically, they were tag teaming me. This goes on for a couple of rounds. Fortunately for me, because I'm not going to be able to do this the entire race, I was doing better with the climbing than Kevin was. And when Randy last attacked, I was able to get right on his wheel because I was expecting it. And so then we started to get a little bit of distance on Kevin. Ordinarily in this situation, when you have 2-on-1, and I'm following Randy's wheel in this case, now Randy would have to take a look and see that that Kevin is back there, then he would have to slow up, and then it would be my responsibility to go and continue to chase to stay away from Kevin. But because Kevin was having such a hard time on this, and I wanted to conserve my energy, I figured that if Kevin got back, that I would still have the advantage on the climb. And even though Kevin is a strong sprinter with a lot of power, the climb at the very end is just too long for him to maintain to be able to beat me. So right or wrong, that is what I was going with. As I'm putting this video together, this is the first time I'm seeing this clip. Now, Kevin's been chasing us, and we're just finishing the third lap, so we have 2 more times. He's now doing the serpentine. So that kind of supports what I was thinking earlier. A little further up the climb, I decided to do an experiment. I was noticing that I was recovering every time I was getting to the stepped climb again. And so this time I decided to put in some extra power and see how Randy would react to that. And I saw that I had started to drop him. So I would maintain this, and then I would just slow up and play a bit of possum so as not to tip my hand. And I didn't know if Randy was playing possum. So time would tell. That was the end of the third lap. This is now the finish, the end of the fifth lap. Randy put in some power. I then took a moment and I countered him. For those of you that usually watch my channel, you're probably wondering, is this really Steve on the bike because he can't sprint? Well, I've been working on my sprint a little bit, at least on Zwift. So it seems to be helping. I never turned around when I was doing this, so as far as I know, he's on my wheel or close to it. I'm just keeping up the power, and I come in 7th place. Even though I was so close to staying with him at the end of the second lap, this was a good day for me. I hope you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it. As always, remember, comment, like, subscribe. The Cycling Greek.